Hello, everyone, and welcome to the American Scouser podcast. That was way too zoomed in for my liking, especially for us two over here when this down to two people. But we are back after, well, as we get ready for the World Cup over here. I'm your host, as always, Timuchin, and with us today is Gally only. Gally, what's happening?
Oh, not too much. Just trucking through another Monday. Excited to actually get to review a victory that we performed well in, which is I feel shocking and a little dirty,
Yes,
but
yes. I
excited.
mean, I think it was yeah, a lot to talk about in that game. Kind of like a couple of performances to dissect, so that should be interesting. Alan is with us as always. Alan, what's happening? Um Bickler is not with us today. He's actually flying back home. He should be landing shortly, I think, or somewhere in the air. He spent the last 4 or 5 days in Chicago, and I had that like I can sense a disturbance in the force feeling the last 4 or 5 days over here, knowing Bickler is somewhere close. He was hanging out with Ari and never got a chance to get together because as much as Ari would like to meet a Turkish celebrity properly, kind of wanted those two guys to hang out and enjoy some father son time. They were all over Chicagoland, but no Bickler today. He is flying back. But you know what? I am very proud of that guy. Not only because he came to Chicago in this goddamn cold weather, because that takes a lot of courage by itself, but I literally got a message last week, and I was at like Layla's events. She was getting like an award for like art and stuff like that. So we're there. There's a lot of talking going on in these things, by the way. So I'm able to look at my phone, but I got a message saying, "Hey, Bicklet is doing trivia without you," and I almost felt like a tear rolled down my cheek. Was so proud. I don't think you were as proud, were you?
I mean, I was ready to bring up the logo and make a joke, and then I bring up the logo to make a joke, and the asshole's like, "And I have a question." I was like, I thought we were in this together. I thought we were teammates. You are. He'll get it. There'll
I
be
like how
another
he
event.
carries on the tradition. He says he hates it, but you know deep down he loves it. Alan is asking what the temperature is. You know what, Alan? I'm not going to give you the pleasure of answering that because I know you're going to come back and say how nice it is in Houston. So I will not give you the pleasure, sir. I can tell you this: it's cold as fuck and it's supposed to snow. So I'll leave it at that. But to torture you further, we still have uh trivia question because hey, if you guys can do it without me, I definitely have to do it when I'm here. So this is a World Cup related one. BJ was asking me, and he's been actually gathering some information regarding Liverpool and World Cup. So I thought this was a good one over here. The Let's see, let me get the question right so you don't have to ask. Which LFC player has scored the most goals in World Cup matches? See, I knew Alan would be bragging about his temperatures is like 54 here. Dude, it wasn't even like a high of 54 here during the day, leave alone at night. So, highest score. I was actually shocked to hear this, to be honest with you. I'm not going
I'm
to give
not
you
gonna
the
lie.
I knew the answer kind of a thing. I had no idea.
Yeah, I don't really. I'm not going to get this right. I know that for a fact. I'm
We
trying to
should have
think
Bickler
who.
call in if he wasn't on the plane. He would have called in with the
You
answer.
think he'd have any goddamn clue? That
No,
is
he would
such
be like,
bullshit.
which World Cup? Like this World Cup or last?
He'd be like, is it, were they playing for Liverpool at the time? Was it this? And to be fair, he is always just giving me time to think of answers. Um, I genuinely am not sure. I do remember a few goals for Spain. Um, I'll say Fernando Torres because I know he scored more than three for Spain in a World Cup, but I don't believe it's the right answer.
See, I thought that was like one of my guesses. I thought maybe
Well, I
like
don't feel
Suarez
as
had
stupid.
like
I just
one
feel
game.
semi stupid.
The correct answer is Michael Owen with 4 goals. Two each in 98 and 2002, two each for obviously England. Hunt is a good guess. He's actually a tie for the next spot with three. Um, and Gerard also has three. So
See,
I thought
I would
I
never
think
have guessed
Torres is a good
Gerard.
good shout because I thought, like I say, I was kind of shocked and I was like, "Oh, really?" And like he had to like made him literally double check his numbers and had BJ out his stats over there. But yeah, it is
I
Owen
never,
with
I never,
4.
ever would have guessed Gerard, to be honest. Just because he didn't have that many great, I can't remember that many great England moments. I'd have to like really rack it back to try to
No, but
think
they've
of those
had
goals.
some games where they've kind of like really beat up on some people in the World Cup. Thank God they never played Turkey. They've beaten up on Turkey a couple of times in like eliminations and things like that. But they've had some like games where they've been able to do that, and I'm assuming that's where some of these goals came from. So if you have watched those games and remember them, just go ahead and share and let us know. But that was the trivia this week. We did not skip it. I got to follow in Bickler's footsteps and make sure we have it every week. But a
That's a
lot to
scary
get to
path.
today with the World Cup coming up and stuff. I want to kind of get your opinion on a couple of things like that. I mean, we talked a bit about it in this morning's coffee show. And if you are not following it, morning coffee or tea, I have my coffee. Alan over here who's commenting always brings his tea. But join us every morning, 8 o'clock Central, for about 30 minutes or so with different guests. We kind of take a look at the headlines. And now with the World Cup coming, we're going to spend the rest of the week kind of like previewing the different groups. And once the World Cup starts, obviously, it's going to be more World Cup focused. I'd rather stay away from, I mean, aside from the daily Ronaldo updates, if in terms of what he said now, who did he throw under the bus now? Aside from that, I think that's going to be it for the most part. But let's get to the game first. Then we'll go to the World Cup altogether. You were talking about when we first started that overall it's a pretty impressive performance. We get that goal from a set piece, but then give it right back. By the way, you know me, Gally. I hate to toot my own horn. That's not me. But not only did I call the score, everybody who listens knows, damn it. But but not only did I call the score, I even called how Southampton would score their goal. What do you make of that first half? What do you make of the lineup? Does Let me start with the lineup, I guess, first and get your take. Is Elliott, as of now, the third starting midfielder in this lineup, ahead of, for example, Henderson?
Yes. He has displaced Jordan Henderson as the starting midfielder for this side, in my opinion. We've seen it enough now over 15 matches. With Henderson fit, he is still getting starts. So for me there, I think there is something to that. I feel like there's something off with Jordan this year anyways, and the rest probably isn't the worst thing. Didn't shock me to see him not start this match, even if he hadn't picked up the knock with his older bones and on his way to Qatar. But for me, Harvey Elliott has put himself in the frame as an everyday starter. I don't know that he's there yet to be a first team 11 player at a club of this size with this type of aspirations. But right now, the way we're set up, he is our starting midfielder on the right-hand side.
I mean, this game, we were talking about it. We recorded the Premier League show earlier, and we saw, we were talking about City, and we saw the City game before this game, obviously, on Saturday. And a lot of the minds were, it at least felt like a lot of the brains were at the World Cup. Like, up here, I'm already gone, kind of a thing. And the game was played like that, especially for City. They were not themselves. I guess people could be having a poor game, but I got that sense where a team plays poorly when they have like a big Wednesday Champions League game or something like that. And that's like the feeling I got. As opposed to that, it felt like, especially in the first half, Liverpool came out with a mission in mind. And it's probably the most fluid we've looked attacking, especially at home. Do you give that credit to us, or do you give that credit to Southampton and the way they approached it?
I give that credit to us because I do think, unlike City, right? And I think that was a good analogy there, kind of parallel what you were pulling to. I think both sides went about the pending World Cup a little differently. I think the City players played it as if it's kind of a training ground match and we just got to figure out how to get the win here against Brentford, make sure we don't get hurt, and just go through the paces. I felt like Liverpool came out like they were told, let's get out blazing. Let's get up 2-3 goals by the half. And if we can coast a little bit in the second half, we'll make some substitutions and we can prepare for the World Cup. But maybe that's the difference. City wanted to get 3 points and put the pressure on Arsenal, right? To maybe slip up and they'd be top of the table. But let's not kid ourselves. City's not chafed one bit about being 5 points back to Arsenal right now. They still feel like they're the most talented side and they're going to win this league. Liverpool needed 3 points to go into this World Cup break. So I think we came out with a different verb and a different onus on the match. So I do think it was more about what we did early because we were buzzing. And we'll get to my main man, Bobby Firmino's goal. Good thing
man, how that guy went from the doghouse to be your main man.
Good thing I never gave up on him and was supportive of him all along. Unlike some of the other fair weather fans on this.
Yeah,
podcast,
I gotta get our video editor on this so he can go back and clip.
Oh no,
when
no.
There's no smack on poor Bobby.
Zero. There's zero evidence of that. But no, and I do think though it would be unfair to talk all about us and not acknowledge that Southampton as a new manager, brand new, had less than 48 hours to work with this team and clearly doesn't even know all of their names yet because when he needed to change the match in the second half, he went to the ghost of Theo Walcott. And for the plain fact that he called on Theo Walcott, made me think to himself, like he was looking at his bench and he was like, wait, I see one Premier League guy. Problem is, he was a Premier League player in 2009. Theo, take your 7 chins in. Take your 7 chins in. He's got one of them LeBron James beards, which is purely so no one knows he weighs 35 pounds more than he did at Arsenal. I was not throwing it at you, my friend. But in all seriousness, I know we're going to get deeper into the match itself. But from the lineup standpoint, I like the way that they attacked what was a weakness of Southampton, which was the organization of the defense. And I really like the way Nunez especially was creating chaotic moments all over the pitch. And you could almost tell their right back knew about 5 minutes in. Bleep. This kid's even better than I thought.
I think he poses, I mean, man, as I watch him and as I watch this front line, and I think it's almost like getting better and better in terms of like how they interact. Bobby's a key part in that, obviously, but like the interplay and stuff like that between, I mean, that setup that Nunez had, I think, was that to Mo or No, it was the Bobby, right? Like the way they set up the triangles and stuff like that. It seems a lot more fluid. And obviously with time, it's going to get better. My only question moving forward is down the road, as I watch the game and I'm like, man, just imagine if you have a fast Diaz on the left-hand side as well, and you have Nunez in the middle with Mo on the right-hand side. That is a very, very scary trio to face as a defender because they got all the speed in the world, so they can take you to the line and they can cut in and crack a shot at any given moment. But would we miss what Bobby brings? Being the huge fan of Bobby you are suddenly,
Absolutely.
would we miss what Bobby brings to the interplay there? Does he have to be there somehow?
I think he probably does for a bit of it, and we've been talking about this though, like there's still a clamoring for pushing Mo more centrally because the more central he is, the more looks at goal he actually gets. I think there is a world where we actually see Nunez on the left, Mo through the middle, Diaz on the right, and Bobby behind. And I think those 4 attackers gives us the best actual attacking play we have. And I think you could also rotate then and say, well, if you have to take Diaz out and sit him, you could then play Jota through the middle, move Mo back out right. I feel like Darwin Nunez is crafting and creating a position for himself on the left flank, whether that's a front 2 or a front 3, or he's just playing out on the wing. I think he does so much from out wide on the left. And I think we're seeing that he can create goals, he can score goals, and he can take on defenders. And you even started to see some of that really good link-up play with Robertson that, let's be totally fair, we really haven't seen click yet with Diaz, even going all the way back to last year.
Yeah.
It has never worked with Robo. So, I don't want to say, oh, Mo's got to play in the middle, because I love Mo on the right. But if we're going to keep our guys so wide, then maybe it is Mo through the middle with Bobby or Jota behind him, and then eventually Carvalho. And I just think that when we get all of them back, we're actually going to see what it's like to have 5 or 6 really classy attackers that can all interchange. And I think we're finally starting to see it. But it scares me to move Darwin back to the middle when Diaz comes back. I'm not going to lie. Because he looked a little lost at the beginning of the season when he was playing through the middle. And we moved him out wide to where he was playing so well for Benfica. And I think we're seeing the player everyone thought we were buying. This guy that just creates problems for the opponent. And I just don't know he does as much of that through the center. Maybe eventually he will, but, I was just so impressed with him. And it wasn't just the goals. I mean, the move he has, the great run he has, and he tries the perfect one-time ball to Mo and the defend in the first half before we even scored the first goal. It was arguably the best pass he's made yet, because he knew what he needed to do, right? He got in space and he sent the ball at the right time, and the defender made a great play. But if he doesn't, Mo taps that shit in.
Yes.
And I feel like what we're seeing on a Nunez is small increments every week to the all-round player that he can be. And then we see the glimpses of just the Tasmanian devil that he is on the pitch. Because literally you could see that guy and there is a spinning ball of shit flying around him everywhere he goes.
That's the part that partially scares me, though, because against the Southampton team like we had, you can set the Tasmanian devil loose. You know what I mean? You can be like, go at it. I think when you play against some better teams, the spaces he leaves behind, especially when he's on the wing, I feel like can be more dangerous. The pressing game and how much of it he will learn and be a part of, especially, I mean, if he's in the middle, even if he's on the wing on the left-hand side, because you do sometimes see him. We didn't see it as much this game because really Southampton didn't have that much possession, or they were smart enough to get the heck out of there and not really try to build as much and kind of absorb that press. But you can kind of see at times Nunez go out of position within that crazy mindset. But like you say, it's a step at a time, and it's something that's improving. As I watch, I'm trying to, in my head, put Diaz in there too. And we're totally forgetting Jota, by the way, who could be that piece in the middle too, because he likes that spot in the middle, and he's probably the best header of the ball, really. Well, maybe after Nunez now. But I'm having trouble kind of trying to figure out. It's almost like it's a good problem to have, I guess, but too many good guys trying to fit in those 3 spots. And if you put the Bobby back in that spot that we were talking about, kind of handing it to Elliott, does that concern you defensively?
Putting Bobby in the 10 hole?
If you put Bobby, I mean, you're basically going to a 4-2-3-1. Does that worry you defensively, or do you just basically keep your backs in the back and not push Trent and Robo up as much?
It doesn't worry me as much as long as at least one of the fullbacks is hanging back. And I will say we've kind of seen that, haven't we? I mean, Trent has not been taking up the same positions he had been taking up earlier in the season and parts of last year. I feel like we've almost shifted the pitch to tell Trent, you can go forward, but only to so much of an extent. Part of that, I think, is Elliott offers more creativity on the right-hand side than in link-up play with Mo than, say, Jordan does, because that's just the style of his play. And the other is that, I think Klopp has slightly adjusted Trent's positioning in our tactics to help him defensively, because there's only so many times you can go to the podium and say, it's not his fault I tell him to stand in those spots when he leaves space behind. And then eventually the reporter's like, well, can you do us a favor and just stop telling him to leave so much space behind? Could he defend a little bit better? And I think it's happened. I mean, the most shocking thing to me is through 15 matches, Trent Alexander-Arnold doesn't have an assist in the Premier League.
That is shocking, and I think that's kind of because of how we played in the beginning, and that basically Mo kind of took over that creating spots.
Yep.
I know like everybody's complaining about, like his lack of scoring, but he kind of became the provider, and like the creator just was tied to that timeline, like the sideline way too much. And I think you're kind of seeing that's less and less now too, with setting up those triangles. He's making those runs into the box a lot more. Definitely looked a lot more fluid, especially when we were attacking. We do give up the set piece goal, which, I mean, we were talking about the Premier League show. It's kind of like Prowse putting it in the perfect spots. But then I think even more impressively, we bounced back. And honestly, that was the first half that I watched where I had confidence that we were going to get goals, just the way we were attacking, just the way we were connecting. Whereas there are some games where, we talk on a Discord channel and we're like, where's the goal going to come from? I just never got that sense this game. It almost was like, it's going to come. I mean, you could kind of see it's the way things were unfolding.
Yeah, I actually felt like they should have scored more in the first half than they did. I mean, we talk about Allison, and Allie was great again. I mean, let's be real. He's the player of the year so far, and it's going to take a lot for a player to supplant him from that mantle. Because if we end up getting to where we want to be, top 4 or somehow a title chance, being a run for a cup, it's also going to all be because he laid the foundation early in the year when we couldn't stop anything.
Yeah.
And he was stopping everything. So, great job by Allie. At the same time, I thought the young keeper for Southampton played outstanding. He could have been in better positioning, obviously, for Bobby's header. He just took one step forward, and once he did, he was done. But he made 2 or 3 really, really class saves, or it could have been 4 or 5 by the half. I mean, Mo should have scored in the first half. Darwin should have scored in the first half before they did, and then Darwin gets you the brace. You're up 3-1, and it honestly from there it never really put me in a peril moment. I never wanted to see it get to 3-2 because, well, I've been watching since August, and I know what happens when we're up by 1. We concede again. But I felt that bring that up. I felt we have to talk about this. He is every bit on par. He is a very, very good goalkeeper, and he's starting in the Premier League. I had this argument with Jamie last week. I'll have it again. If Kelleher wants to be the number 1 for Ireland, he needs to leave Liverpool Football Club in search of first-team football because that kid's 21 years old.
Like the whole Kelleher conversation.
No, but that kid's 21 years old and playing every day. And honestly, when you talk about your backup goalie, it usually means that your starter's not that good. It's like the backup quarterback in the NFL. If you're really clamoring for the backup quarterback, it's really an indication on your current.
Because Ali was it felt like he was getting injuries regularly, where our backup goalie situation was a lot more important than before. I will be just worried I think you're right for probably, I mean, we totally went off subject, by the way.
No.
But, for Kelleher's future, for him to be a starter, yes, he definitely has to go somewhere else, and he probably is ready for it. I just don't know if he is. I mean, for us, it would be that good of a move unless we're really banking on it, because Murphy's Law, the moment you let him go, something will happen to Ali again.
And I've always said, right, a lot of times when we talk about transfers on this program and others, I don't say I want the player sold. I speak sometimes as if I were the player. The player wants to play. I know he re-upped, but he was angling for a move this summer and then got asked to stay. I don't know that we hold on to him much longer because every time he gets a chance to play, he shows himself as a number 1 keeper. I mean, he won a cup last year on his boot. I mean, literally, he was outstanding. He just won us another big match in the League Cup, and he's going to have another big start coming up in December against City, and I hope he gets another trophy for himself. He's on the mural. It will always be memories, and I'm sure there'll be a sell-on clause or a buyback clause. But if he doesn't go play, he's not going to get to play. And that's just, I mean, Ali's got 6 to 8 more great years.
Yeah, with Ali's age, exactly. I mean, you're going to be sitting around.
It's not a knock.
I don't think anybody wants to sit around for that. Anybody who's competitive to make it this level is content with like sitting around for that long. Alan is asking if there was anyone that we saw a potential to buy from Southampton. And the funny thing is, we just talked about this when we were kind of in our morning show, which we actually featured a contributor from like LFC in Jamaica. And we were talking about it, and Trevor, who joins me in the morning show, is saying that the people with the hyphenated name in Southampton, because everybody we looked at, we were like, we'd be interested in it, somehow had a hyphen. There's a lot of hyphens on that team, but going back to the game, because we totally got
Yeah.
off topic here. Let's go back to this. Jane was talking about, we were talking about Elliott. He's doing fantastic, but he can be rotated and knows he has more to learn. Anybody who pulls off those passes, and we're still talking about it. Exactly. I mean, I think some of the things he does on the field are pure class for a kid his age. I guess my concern still is defensively, especially knowing when you have on Trent on the right hand side on his side.
I still struggle at times with Elliott defensively. I think at times he's still learning on the job, which is something I've always said and something I've always kind of worried about, was that we force our young players to actually play through their developmental periods instead of letting them play with the youth teams and make mistakes that don't really matter. We allow guys to make mistakes at the top club level. Maybe that's part of our squad depth. Maybe that's based on how Klopp likes to bet in players. Jurgen Klopp clearly believes Harvey Elliott is ready, both offensively and defensively, because he's starting him when his captain is healthy. And when one of his players that's so important in Fab is so out of form, and he has a ready-made replacement in Henderson, and he's still starting Elliott over both of them. So for me, Jurgen Klopp has come to grips with whatever deficiencies Elliott has going backwards, he offers more to the side going forwards.
Do you
And I
agree?
will say, personally, I don't.
All right, that's all
But
was
I
gonna
don't know that I know enough about the inner workings of what's working here and not, because I put a lot of blame at times on the midfield role and Fab, right? Yet then I listen to people tell me that it's Trent's defending. Like, you were a defender at the college level, you played all your life growing up. You have been very critical specifically to like some of Trent's actual like man-on defending. And then I hear Klopp say the absolute opposite when he speaks. So, like, I know what my eyes tell me. My eyes tell me I'm more comfortable when Henderson's on the pitch. My eyes honestly tell me at times I was more comfortable when Keita was on the pitch, because I felt like he was in a little bit more control in the position. I still think we need more adults in the room as options in the midfield.
Yeah.
Which comes back to buy me the 3 midfielders we needed in the summer. And I think Harvey Elliott is a great story, changing matches from the bench and playing in some league cups. I think he's being forced to start for Liverpool way too early in his career, because our
I think
squad's
that
not
will
big enough.
give the time that, I think like Jamie's talking about in terms of the kind of like learning, still can learn on the job, maybe get those like 20 minutes, 30 minutes and stuff like that a game. Like on a game like this, he comes in the second half, for example, against like Southampton in that midfield, like to kind of like be the more creative player and stuff like that. I mean, going back to Trent, I think Klopp says that because a lot of the criticism that Trent gets are by people just looking at his positioning. So we get a goal conceded from the right hand side. Everyone's like, where's Trent? Well, I mean, that's not necessarily always Trent's fault. What I criticize about Trent's defending is when Trent is already freaking there and he should be defending. And it's kind of like losing his man, not turning, looking over his shoulder, like some of the basics things, or knowing it's almost like he sometimes baits that pass down the sideline, but not be able to stop it. Because if you're baiting it, you better stop it. And, like things like that he does is what I'm more concerned myself with defending wise. I think Klopp kind of sticks up for him because a lot of the criticism that I see online, or even like pundits and stuff like that, is like, well, Trent should be back there. Well, we don't know that because we don't know what Klopp is giving in terms of instructions. But when you are back there, we know how you defend the give and go. We know how you look over your shoulder. Those are, I think, like the things. And I think that's why I'm concerned, when like Elliott being there, not in a game like this, but I think more against a tougher opponent. I don't think, a game like this, Southampton posed enough of a threat to be worried about defensively. But let's get to the second half then, having said that, because we talked about how Ali saved a bunch of, one-on-one, some ridiculous saves. Do you give that to the World Cup modes that we entered in the second half partially, or Southampton finally kind of like actually getting some courage to attack?
I think they got a little bit more courage to attack at the exact same moment our guys slid a little bit into, you know, World Cup speed.
What time is the flight again? Like,
I'm pretty sure Virgil figured it out at about the 65-minute mark. Right? He was like, yeah, I'm going to run here, but maybe not like full out sprint. And don't get me wrong, no one was dogging it, but it wasn't like they were climbing up on people's backs to try to score on, big time headers, or like they weren't looking for contact. They weren't looking for collisions like they normally would. And I don't blame them. I just think that we knew we were up 3-1. And as long as that match stayed 3-1, we had nothing to worry about. And if they gave up a goal, right? If they gave up a goal, it was just 3-2, and then we would go back on the front foot again. But I feel like as long as it was 3-1, they were like, let's get this through this 45-minute training session, make sure nobody gets hurt. We all go have our kumbaya and our tea in the dressing room, and then we all say goodbye for 6 weeks and go to our separate corners.
Yeah, I think it was more of just put it on cruise control, and then they would take it off of cruise if we'd bank tack to 3-2. But you know how it is. Once it's 3-2, it's squeaky bump time. You never know, a ball bounces the wrong way or like a call goes against us and stuff like that. But even so, as much as I worry as a lifestyle, I kind of like watching that game. I figured, even if it becomes 3-2, I had confidence for that team to kind of be like, I guess we got to go again and be able to get the fort. It just felt like we were not chasing it. Maybe the front line was still chasing it. Those guys are always hungry for goals. But I think the way we played, and probably could be from instructions from club, we weren't as aggressive in terms of pushing up. And we did not want to give those spaces in the back. And even then, Southampton was able to create. But a great game by Ali. I mean, that was just like some ridiculous saves. Dude is so freaking good. But
so good.
Apart from, I was talking about this morning. I want to get your take. You look at the first, it's not even half, but so far this season, I feel like if we didn't have those two hiccups back to back, despite the poor starts and some like disappointing performances and results, if that Leeds and Forest game, we could have actually won it as we should have. This does not seem as disastrous to me. It's those two games that makes the beginning of the season more of a disappointment than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was thinking about it the other day. I'd even say, let's just say we beat Forest, because that was a 1-0 BS goal, right? Everything was stupid, from the kick ball up, the ball bouncing off the goalpost, just a weird goal. The former Liverpool player scoring it, everything that added up. Let's just say we get 3 points at Forest like we should have. Even if we got a disappointing draw and Somerville doesn't get the late winner, give me those 4 points. We're in 5th place right now, even with United on points, 11 goals, 12 goals ahead on differential, 13 actually on differential. And we're 3 points outside of Spurs with a game in hand against the toothless Chelsea side for top 4. I'm fine. If you give me all 6, I tell you, we're still in the title race, let alone.
Really? You go that far, huh?
Look, if you give us all 6 points, right? Give us all 6 points. We have
20 game in hand.
We have a game in hand. We're 4 points behind City. That's it. I still look at City as the barometer of the team you are trying to catch for points, because I believe at the end of the day, they will be the team at the top of the table. So, and Arsenal's game in hand is against City. Yeah. So one of the two of them is dropping points. So, we're right there. We're right there with a shout to everything if you give me those 6 points. Now, the eternal optimist, where's Jamie when I need him? Where's Megan when I need her? They'll tell you, well, if that's the case, then we're still right there. Get a couple results in January, buy a player or two. I believe the league is gone. That said, I firmly believe we will finish in the top 4. I really do. Because I think this team has only its best football in front of it. And I think we will strengthen a little bit in January. I think we will get more players back healthy. This World Cup is very important. We need our 4 or 5 players playing in this World Cup to come home healthy. That is critical to me. Like, we can't have Darwin have an issue at the Cup. We need them all to show up and get back healthy, and we need to attack starting December 22nd onward.
I think, yeah, because I mean, we talked about this before. I think once Arsenal's Thursday games become a lot tougher than they have been, they're going to have a lot more issues because that stuff definitely adds up for one. Yeah, and I think, like I say, that's what makes those 2 games extremely painful and disappointing for me because I know if we're in the title race, but at least you're in the conversation. And I agree with the top 4, though. I really think, I mean, at one point, people were kind of like painting huge disaster scenes. Unless, to be fair, we were playing like it. But I really think, the way you see things now, if we're able to add to that midfield, because I think, when you say getting the players back, they're all coming to the front line for the most part and defense. If you get like Matip back and stuff like that for your back line, and you get Jota back and Diaz back, but for midfield, unless you're counting Keita, heck, Ox is back already. So it's not a lot of like reinforcements coming back there. So it has to be addressed, hopefully. If that midfield was a bit deeper and we made a couple of good additions, I think like top 4 is very, very doable, and we're not far off of it right now. So here's a good question. This is kind of wanted to shift over to the World Cup conversation. Alan says, here's a question for you guys. Do the players that play in the World Cup come back as ready for action, better prepared than the players who don't go to the World Cup? And I think with the World Cup, especially in the later rounds, I mean, not all our guys are going to make it to the later rounds. And even if they do, like Fab, it's not like he plays a lot and stuff like that. So I don't think the minutes wear and tear is not as much there. With the World Cups and any of these tournaments, I always feel like the bigger factor is psychological factor more than actual like physical factor of the wear and tear of the games, because really it's not as bad. If you had to pick one player who you feel like has to have a really good World Cup, who would you pick? You pick one guy and say, I want him to have the best World Cup. Psychologically, who would you pick?
As a Liverpool,
As a
Liverpool player?
yeah.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understood the question. That was in honor of Paul not being
Don't
here
pull a
tonight.
Bickler on me. Yeah.
No. Repeat the question. Gives you time to think of your bullshit answer. So I'm gonna say it's Nunez. And my reasoning, and I do have a 1A, but I'm gonna start with Nunez, and I would say it's Nunez for the primary focus point that he's a confidence player. He's a player who's just finding his way right now with Liverpool, a new club, new city, new language. I think he could go to this World Cup and announce himself as a star on the world stage, like he did last year during the European, during the Champions League. And I think if he does that, he comes back with confidence at an even higher level, right, than he had when he left, which right now I would argue his confidence is at an all-time high for Liverpool. I think if he goes and leads the line with Suarez and Uruguay does anything, I think it goes a long, long way. That is never anything you want to admit in public, Alan. Never. You just don't admit to agreeing with me. It's usually a surefire way to have someone tell you you're a fucking moron. Or just ask my wife. But I think it's Nunez. How about you? Mr. Mute.
I was gonna say Trent just because of what you said last about Nunez, because I think he has built confidence as a Liverpool player over the last month or so. If it was earlier, like if we posed this question a month ago, I might have probably said Nunez as well, because I think that's what he really needed: get some goals, build the confidence, get some assists and be in the play and affect the scoreline and kind of show his value. I feel like the last month we've seen that, right? I mean, all these people who were saying, I think Haaland was so high, it made him look a lot lower because they're always going to be compared. And with Haaland is not light in the world, and with his injury and stuff like that, not as much. You've seen, Nunez score goals, get assists and stuff like that, and all these people who were kind of calling him a flop automatically have to kind of back up. And I think that kind of helps his confidence. But I think a guy who can really use a good World Cup defensively, attacking wise, to me would be Trent. Because if Trent has a really solid World Cup, regardless of where England end up or what round they end up, whatever happens, I think it would help him. Because I feel like out of all those players, he's probably lacking the most confidence.
When I said earlier, like I will go with Nunez because I think like he needs it, and I have a 1A for you. My 1A was Trent, and I agree with everything you said about Trent. Here's the thing: there are some rumblings that he's going to be 24, 25, or 26, and not even getting a jersey for the matches in Qatar. Like the 26 men don't dress. 3 guys don't get a shirt, and there's talk. But there's talk that they're literally like he may not even would it really surprise you if Southgate did that? Because ultimately, what is Trent? He is almost like it's this enigma to Southgate. Like, let's be real. Southgate wishes that he had a fully fit Kyle Walker and a fully fit Reece James.
Oh yeah,
because he would have left Trent in England. He wouldn't have even brought him to Qatar. Because every time he gives him a cap, what is the first thing that Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher and all the pundits all ask him? How are you going to utilize this? How are you going to utilize your best fullback? And he's like, well, he's not my best fullback. He might be Liverpool's best fullback, but he's not England's best fullback. I mean, he's going to start Trippier. He's going to start. I mean, I genuinely don't know that Trent's going to play that much in this World Cup. I could be totally wrong. But I don't actually, I don't know that this is going to be a great experience for Trent.
See, Bo says he says, I think Trent plays honestly. I think he plays a few games. He gets some minutes. I don't know if he's going to be when
he's not starting him over Luke Shaw or Trippier, period.
He's definitely not starting him. I don't think he's starting him, but I can see him coming off the bench and actually, I mean, I don't think he will start even, let's say they win their first 2 games and they're like a lock for the next round and stuff like that. Maybe something like that. But I think overall, though, he does see some minutes, and I'm hoping those are solid minutes. The worst case scenario would be not getting minutes and I mean, actually getting some minutes, but playing poorly in those. And yeah, Boas says off the bench. That's what I'm agree with that. Thiago not going. He'll be ready to go when we return. Imagine winning the World Cup and trying to get up for Brentford away. I mean, that's the thing. In some ways, some of our guys, going back to like what Alan was asking about earlier, I think is a good thing. For these, I mean, not for them, obviously, for Thiago and Bobby. I think Thiago is like whatever. I don't think Thiago is as devastated that he's not going as much as, like, for example, Bobby is. But in some ways, these guys do need that rest. But I just hope to God we do not say, well, thank God they're not going, they're getting some rest and not do anything and assume that there's, Thiago is going to come back like he's like 22 again or something like that. Because
they're playing now. They're playing. They have 2 friendlies in Dubai during the World Cup. No, but Klopp has said they're training every day, and every player that is not released to a World Cup team is expected to stay in Liverpool.
There's only like a chance for him to get injured in practice. Is that what you're saying?
Well, pretty much. I mean, that's what we do. I mean, the physios still have a job. The physios still get bonuses to Muchin.
So Ox will be out by next week.
I mean, listen, if it was 2018 and Ox wasn't hurt, he'd be gearing up for a World Cup right now. I mean,
no shit, right? That
was a huge opportunity for Ox, actually. He was 4 years ago at this time, coming off that Champions League run that you remind us about all the time, that he blew his knee out. Ox was probably going to start in the midfield for England. In that World Cup that they went to the semifinals.
Says what a great player Ox was before he got injured on the show. I don't know.
I think it's this
we'll
guy.
Have to go back to the tapes.
I think it's this guy in red. This is guy. He's got all these smart takes after the fact. Let me tell you.
Do we
And
need to
just ask
watch these
Alan.
shows back? I wonder. Okay. So let's talk about the World Cup real quick. Starting this week in the morning show, we're gonna kind of like take a look at the groups, and then I'm sure like throughout on the Mondays we'll be talking about the World Cup. We'll wait for Bickler to do predictions and stuff like that because obviously it starts next Sunday and we'll be live. Hopefully, with Bickler here, having had 85 burgers in Chicago, he'll hopefully still fit the screen and we'll be able to talk to him then. But where do you stand on the World Cup? Talking about it this morning, we were in the chat earlier on the Discord channel before we went on live. In terms of like watching, boycotting, how much are you going to be into it? Out of all these international games, like I watched over the years Euros, and World Cup is my favorite over Euros just because it's kind of has different styles of play clashing against each other like South American teams. I know that gap has changed over the years. It's not as unique as it used to be, but it's still different. Like a team from Africa taking on a team from Europe and stuff. I always find that a lot more interesting and a lot more fun to watch, like seeing those styles clash. But this is probably like the least excited I've been. I don't know if it's like the timing of it. I don't know if it's like the drama behind it. But where do you stand on that?
So I usually rate the World Cup as like the top sporting event in the world, like period. That's my favorite thing. So, and no, that is never
Eagles
something
get
that this
touchdown, and we got to
that
get
is
this. No, get the fuck
just
out of
just so we're clear, just so we're clear on this goddamn podcast, that is never something that a New York Giants fan ever roots for, or someone from New England. Like, I don't root for anything positive in Philadelphia. I basically did everything I could during that weekend of the Fan Fest to not let people realize who I was. And thank God when I got drunk enough to scream out loud, they're just a bunch of Eagles fans, or I think I actually said dirtbag Philly fans. And literally this guy behind me leaned over and went, "Hey man, you're in a Buffalo Bills bar, but just so we're clear, if you said that shit in the wrong place, you'd be in trouble." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm in Philadelphia, man. I'm in real
Yeah.
trouble all
Well,
the time."
remind me not to go anywhere where you're drunk next time we go to the Fan Fest together, because I don't want to get my butt beat because you're like
Don't
saying
worry. Don't worry. Don't worry. There are no sports fans in Orlando or Tampa. We're safe. So
Alan says
here's
he
my
only
thing.
plans to watch USA, England, and then the final. You're lying, Alan. You're gonna watch the other
Yeah,
game.
I don't know how anyone can say this stuff. I'm gonna watch. Now I'll say this, if my boss is listening, I'm not gonna watch that much because it's supposed to be the busiest time of the year for me.
Yes. What's his name? Let's give it a shout out. Oh,
But
okay.
yeah. Sorry, BJ. It's the truth.
No,
Heavy. Sorry,
we
brother.
don't offend everyone.
I
Tonight.
take on I take on whole communities at once. It's what I do. But I look what I did to the poor people of Bournemouth. But I look at it as I'm not going to give up something I love. Like literally, I'm not going to give up something I love as much as this, purely because of the place in which it's happening and some of the political unrest that comes with it. All that said, right?
By the way, Ellen says, "Wait, Gally has a boss." And we're not talking about the wife, by the way. This is a
Oh
different
no,
boss.
that's
It's
not
like a
Kelly. Kelly can
professional
care
boss.
less.
He already has a boss at home. He has two bosses. He had the wife.
Yeah.
Now he has the dog, and then occasion as well as professionally he has a different boss. So go ahead.
Yeah, they're all over the place. Trust me. I don't let Timuchin kid yourself. He's the fourth boss.
What?
But I look at it literally like two sides to the coin, right? There's the political side, and then there's the drama behind the World Cup. I want to take the social stuff out of it for a moment. I do want to get to it in our conversation, but part of my enjoyment being lost on this World Cup and not being as excited is that I love it in the summer. Summer is a slow time for me. It's a time where there's not football on the calendar, so I get to watch all these matches. Like, I'm thinking to myself, like, I'd be in my buddy's yard, in his barn, on his outdoor TV, randomly showing up at 10 a.m. games or 1 o'clock games, and it would have been great. And instead, what we basically get given to us is, for us, right? You in Chicago, me in the Northeast, we get this freezing cold, drizzly, gonna start snowing any minute, making me miserable. It's dark all day. and like I'm supposed to like take a hiatus from the Premier League, this thing I love during this time of year, so I can watch this World Cup that I also have to hold my nose about all the other stories that I've been listening to for the last couple of years. So I think all that added up has taken away some of the bloom off the rose, but I'm not going to not watch. I can't boycott it because I'm real and I'm honest. And that's just the truth. Like, I wouldn't boycott. I didn't boycott the NFL. I don't boycott NBA games. I'm not going to boycott.
I boycott Major League Baseball.
Well, you boycott Major League Baseball because you clearly have no issue falling asleep at night. I watch baseball late at night because sometimes I can't sleep. Well, that also comes with, being hopped up like you're on an 8-ball of Coke all the time. But that's just me. I digress.
Yeah, I think I agree with that part. I mean, I think, first of all, it's too late in the game. I don't know if boycotting right now and not watching does anything, because Qatar did not get this so they can make money and they hope for like high ratings and stuff like that. They could not care less. This was all for, ego, status, and all that kind of good stuff. Hosting it, look at our stadiums, showing off. I mean, that's what it all was. I mean, they don't care about the money. They're not doing this for the money. So if you're boycotting it, you're not really taking away anything from Qatar, unfortunately. Boys is like boycotting now is too late. We were talking about this earlier. I mean, the boycotting could have only happened if players were on board and like international different federations were on board.
Absolutely.
And it didn't happen. And I don't know. It's kind of not fair. When we were talking about this earlier, I think Megan was saying, and I agreed with her that it's not really fair to expect the players who wait for this for so long to boycott something that they had no say in. It's not like they were like, let's go to Qatar. I mean, if you ask these guys, none of these guys want to do this right now either. But I think what they can do is probably, at least talk about it as much as possible while they're there, because they're not going to get arrested, right? They're not going to be thrown in jail if they go over there and talk about like the rights that are getting violated over there and what happened when they were building these stadiums and stuff like that. I think that's what I kind of want to see now. I understand you could not before take a stance and said, you know what, fuck you guys, and I'm not going. I understand they couldn't do that, and a lot of players could not afford to do that because this might be the only World Cup they play, and I understand that. That's when you need your so-called superstars to step up, because I know if Mbappe said something like that, the whole world would stop, or if Messi said something like that, the whole world would stop. I mean, I was saying earlier, like in the Discord channel, if Jota says I'm not playing, they'll be like, that's cool. They'll be like, fine. But if Ronaldo says I'm not going, it would be a whole different ball game. That's when the superstars could have used their power. They didn't. But I hope now they kind of like constantly voice it, because you're already hearing Qatar paying people off to be snitches at the same time, getting free tickets so that they can snitch on the people who are talking against or maybe broadcasting, filming stuff and all that kind of shit. So I'm hoping the players use the platform now. Now you're there. You're not going to be sent home. Nothing is going to happen to you. Qatar is not going to freaking arrest you because you said something. I think this is a good opportunity for, I wish Ox was there, but this is a good opportunity for them to kind of like at least voice the displeasure of having it where it's at. And I don't care about, the time. I don't care about, right? I mean, if this is the only time we could have it there, and they deserve a World Cup or whatever, I don't care. If that's what happened, it is what it is. This whole complaining about beer and shit, I couldn't care less about either. It's the country, it's their laws. If you don't like it, don't fucking go there. And if you're not able to enjoy sports and football without drinking, well, that's your freaking problem. So I don't care about that stuff either. I know a lot of people are complaining about that. That should be the least of your freaking concerns or problems when you look at all the other stuff that has happened to build these stadiums, how like certain people are treated in that country and the human rights and stuff like that. So you not being able to crack up a cold one as you're watching the game, it's kind of like very trivial to the other shits.
I clearly don't like beer. But
I mean, I like a cold one as much as, well, maybe not as much as you, but
no, clearly not as much as me or Bickler.
As much as most people, but it's not. No, if you go to a country and that's their law, it is what it is.
I've always said this. You make fun of me about this, but I used to go to a lot of baseball games, and when I was in college, you could literally get to. I could get to Fenway Park in less than an hour. I could buy tickets at like 2 a.m. online in college, and I could pick them up at Fenway Park the next day and see like Pedro Martinez pitch against Roger Clemens in their height. So it was a great experience. It was a great day at the ballpark. That whole time when I was going to 4 or 5 baseball games a year, I never drank because at that time it was so expensive. And as a college kid, I saw no reason to like get drunk at a game and then miss things, right? Like constantly getting up and going to get beer, having to go to the bathroom. If you can't drink, you can't drink. That's not the end of the world. The other stuff, obviously, there's some of the things about people being able to be who they are, if they happen to be part of the LGBTQ community, people not being able to have sex. I think there are some awkward rules and regulations. Then again, if you decide to go to a place outside of your own comfort zones, then you adhere to it, right? Like I went to Mexico in college with a bunch of dudes partying. And you know what I had to remind myself every 15 minutes? You're in fucking Mexico, asshole. Don't get in trouble. Because if you get in trouble, shit's going to go down poorly. And that's probably what's going to happen to people who travel over to Qatar. There are rules. If you are willing to put yourself in that situation, I would not be one of those people. Because, well, I'm hooked to this mouth.
So I missed this maybe. Not having sex is part of the rules?
You're not supposed to have sex with only people that are married are supposed to have sex. So they're supposed to be like
okay. I mean, that's kind of hard to monitor, isn't it? Like,
well, they're gonna monitor.
Oh, boys will find a way. You'll find a way, boys. Don't you worry about it.
They're using COVID apps to monitor like what people are going and where they're walking and who they're talking to. Like they're going to be monitoring everything. Like I wouldn't be surprised.
We got action in room 305. Deploy the forces.
Dude, you think it's crazy, man. Like I can imagine. You ever been in a hotel and like out of nowhere the thing just starts like telling you that like don't worry, you don't have to leave the building, but there's a smoke alarm going off in the 7th chapter of the 7th quarter, but this is working. I can see it now. It's like wing 705, sex on floor 3, room 6911. And wait, I did just do that. I didn't even mean to. That was good shit. But listen. Snitches are going to snitch. And you know what? When you have full government control this far along, this is what you get. And to the people who wanted to say this was all grease, this was money, this was corrupt, of course it goddamn was. But so was Brazil, so was South Korea, so was China, and so was Brazil. They're all corrupt at some levels. Everything was about the money. You follow the money in this sport, you'll usually find a couple dirty, shitey people, right? And then you'll usually find a couple bags of more cash. And unfortunately, these weren't bags of cash. These were literally boatloads of cash, like the size of a desert. And they just dropped it in the middle of Qatar. And then everyone was just supposed to forget.
The ratings are not going to make a huge dent in that, I would say.
The ratings are going to be...
commercials. We need the commercials.
And the ratings will be through the roof. You know why? Because people talk about boycotting. Nobody actually does. Everyone was going to stop watching NFL games when the players were kneeling for the anthem. President was screaming at people. You know what happened? NFL ratings went up.
Yep.
This year, NFL ratings going up. And guess what? This World Cup will be watched more than the last World Cup. And the next World Cup
so as well
will be too.
Sparky says, every country has problems and issues. And like I say, I mean,
I agree.
That is as sad as it is. We're probably used to the corrupt part of the ordeal, right? I mean, we've accepted money and corruption into our sports, unfortunately. But I think the parts that bug me are more like on how these stadiums are built, like the equal rights they provide or they don't provide and stuff like that. And now that I found out the no sex thing, I guess I'm going to have to boycott too. What the hell? But I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think but you're right. Once the game starts, we will start talking about the games. I will have a partial guilt probably knowing that's why I hope players ease that guilt by kind of like speaking out. I mean, I hate him with a passion. Bruno Fernandez, for example,
He
had
did a
like
good
something out
job.
saying yesterday, which is like, rare for me to appreciate what he does, but just need a lot
He
more of that. Just need a
he
lot
did a
more
good
of
job.
people saying it, because the least he can do, the whole point of boycotting will be to bring attention to it. I don't think it'll be as effective for one, because I don't think you're making an impact. If the whole goal is to bring attention to it, I think players speaking out is probably the best way to go about it, really.
It's a good job by Bruno Fernandez. Honestly, I'm happy that you mentioned it. The points were very, very strong. I also think. I also think that like.
I don't know if you
I
saw what
also
I saw,
think
but
that
Sparky Parker says just told the wife we can't have sex for 6 weeks. I just want to know how she took the good news.
yeah, I was just gonna say if I told my wife that, she'd say, "Can the World Cup be extended? How long can we roll the World Cup on for?"
How about we
I'd
do
be
the
like,
Premier
"Hey,
League as well?
yeah." She'd be like, "Can we do this until I find someone better?" No, whoa, hoops. No. In all seriousness, I do believe that this World Cup will have kind of some of the ebbs and flows of the emotional roller coaster. But when it all comes down to it, we need a player or two of big stature to speak. And I'm not sure. This is the part that scares me. I'm not sure that the biggest, maybe the most known player that is going to speak might have spoke yesterday. Like, because I think Jordan Henderson will say some damning things when he's over there. I think he'll speak up for himself because he's a leader of England. But Harry Kane isn't going to speak up. Messi's not going to speak up. Ronaldo is just going to sign checks for appearances, probably. He ain't going to speak up. So it'll get lost. Mbappe isn't going to speak up, right? It'll get lost if it's just the smaller players talking about it, bench
Yes.
players, and it has to be some of the star players. And to be honest, I wish it was some of the star managers and some of the star leaders, coaches, because there are some of them that are in positions of power and important names. Hansi Flick is respected in the game as the German national team manager. Totti is respected in Brazil. Like, there are people that could say things. Will they? I don't believe they will. And that's the scary part. They're all just waiting because they don't want to upset UEFA and they don't want to upset FIFA because they want that next job, right? They all like the idea of becoming the ambassador for FIFA for Uruguay someday. And the money that comes with that. And it's just follow the money, people. And when you follow the money in this sport, you usually find powerful people making decisions that don't really care about supporters, that purely care about making more money. And I just think that's why this World Cup is in a tough spot. And I gotta just watch it for the love of the football and not the corruption of the federations, because they're all corrupt. Every single federation, every one of these groups. I mean, they
Because
send
there's
3
money
from
involved, and
America.
obviously and there's a lot of money involved. So whenever there's a lot of money involved, you are going to have that corruption. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Next week we'll get our the moral compass of our show, Bickler's opinion on this.
Oh yes, yes.
It's a low bar.
His,
It is a low
his
bar.
answer is don't worry. I don't have to boycott much. I don't watch the shit anyways. But I know he watches the World Cup.
I know Boaz was asking about it earlier. We will set up our Polish princes on it as we speak. We will set up some kind of like a bracket or something like that we can follow along to. And our contributors as well as our regulars will post the link on our Facebook page. And then we'll probably share it over here during the week. I will probably share it in the morning shows and stuff like that as well, so that we can be wrong in the global scale, not only the Premier League.
I was going to say, so we can have a competition that allows you to come in and week out and make fun of my picks like anything else. That's great.
Hey,
like my fantasy team.
The more contents for me, the better is the way I look at it. But thanks a lot as always for those comments and listening. Do us a huge favor. Give us a like, give us a share, help us spread the word. And we will be back next Monday. We'll see if Bickler is back. Hear his Chicagoland stories, and then we'll start talking a lot more probably about the World Cup teams and stuff like that. Thanks again, everybody, and see you guys next week. Take care.